When Michael and I watched the video 7 Problems with the Pre-Trib Rapture, we noticed there was some cynicism concerning pre-tribbers disregarding parallel passages. And I just wanted to point out that there is a glaring parallel passage that creates a huge problem for the PreWrath model of the rapture that was not touched upon at all in the 2.25 hour video that we watched concerning PreWrath. And that parallel passage is Luke 21. Luke 21 is parallel to Matthew 24. It is the same sermon that Jesus gave, the Olivet Discourse, just that in Matthew it's recorded by Matthew, and in Luke it's recorded by Luke, but it's exactly the same sermon that Jesus gave. And from Luke 21 and verse 20, we see an exact parallel with Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15 onward. In Matthew, Jesus describes the abomination of desolation in verse 15, and in Luke 21 verse 20, he describes Jerusalem surrounded by armies. Now that's a difference, but if you continue to read the passage, you see that everything else is the same. You have in verse 21 of Luke 21, "Then let them that are in Judea flee unto the mountains, and let them that are in the midst of her depart out, and let not them that are in the country enter therein. For these are days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress upon the land, and wrath unto this people." So we see many similarities. This is the same sermon, and these are the same events being described, just given by 2 different people who are giving the account. In Luke 21 verse 25 and on, this passage parallels Matthew 24 verse 29 and on. And here we read in Luke, "And there shall be signs in sun and moon and stars, and upon the earth distress of nations." In verse 26 we read, "For the powers of the heavens shall be shaken." And verse 27 of Luke, "And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these things begin to come to pass, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws nigh." Luke goes on to give the same parable that Matthew recorded, the parable of the fig tree, which we looked at in Matthew. And again in verse 33, he records the same statement that Matthew recorded Jesus as having said, "Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away." Now, in Matthew, following this, Jesus goes on to give some rapture parables about one being taken and one being left, and about the judgment overcoming everyone who dwells on the earth. Now, Luke's parallel passage says this, "But take heed to yourselves, lest haply your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and that day come upon you suddenly as a snare. For so shall it come upon all them that dwell on the face of all the earth. But watch ye at every season, making supplication, that ye may prevail to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man." Now, just to recap what we described in our video on Matthew 24, we explained there that according to the PreWrath model, Matthew 24 culminates in not the second coming of the Messiah in glory, but rather in the rapture of the church. And according to the PreWrath model, all of the events described in Matthew 24, and therefore also in Luke 21, describe events that precede the rapture of the church. This is according to the PreWrath model. And according to the PreWrath model, these passages culminate in the rapture, after which there are no details given and no mention of the second coming of Christ in glory. Now, the problem with this suggestion and this model is found in Luke 21. And the problem is this, that Jesus says in verse 36 of Luke 21, that you should be watching at every season and praying, making supplication. Why? So that you may prevail to escape all these things that shall come to pass. What things? The things that he's just been describing, that the PreWrathers say describe events that occur before the rapture. So how can we pray that we would escape them if they are events that anyway take place before the rapture? Rather, we should understand that there is a possibility for us to escape all of these events that Jesus describes in Matthew 24 and in Luke 21, that we may escape these events. And how? By standing before the Son of Man, not by being preserved on earth. So just to remind you, Luke says that these troubles will come on all them that dwell on the face of all the earth. And how can we escape them? By standing before the Son of Man. And what events can we escape? The events that are described in Matthew 24, that PreWrathers say no believers will escape. But Jesus says that we can escape these events that he describes and stand before the Son of Man. PreWrathers state that there is no escape for anyone of any of these events, and all of them take place before the rapture. That means we should go through all of them right up to the very end. So while pre-tribbers have been accused of not taking into account parallel passages, here is a parallel passage that presents an insurmountable difficulty to the pre-wrath rapture model. This verse allows no possibility for the pre-wrath rapture model, as described in the video that we saw. And the coming of the Son of Man described here in Luke and Matthew 24, that the PreWrathers want to convince us is the rapture of the church, cannot be the rapture, because Jesus promises us the possibility of escaping events that precede that coming. Therefore, it cannot be the rapture, because we are promised the option of being raptured before that coming and before all of the events described before that coming. In my opinion, these verses alone are sufficient to put the whole pre-wrath model of the Olivet Discourse to naught. And that leaves the pretribulational model of the rapture standing as the best model that we have. So I hope this causes you to reconsider these matters, and may the Lord bless you and be with you.